The council chamber reeked of arrogance. High above Earth's orbit, inside a massive citadel floating like a false god among the stars, the Galactic Council had just voted. A unanimous decision. They were invading Earth. They didn't even flinch. Some lizard-skinned freak in ceremonial robes, Counselor Drak, was already planning how to divide Earth's land between the civilized species. A few others were laughing. Earth wasn't even classified as Tier 1, just a backwater rock with an aggressive, outdated population. Nothing to worry about. They have no planetary shields. Their weapons still use combustion-based ballistics, Counselor Venlo sneered, sipping some blue plasma-looking drink. They're primitives. One voice dared to oppose the motion. Ambassador Trin, young for his kind, too idealistic for his seat. They're not just primitives, he said, and the room stilled a moment. They're unpredictable. A silence fell, but it didn't last. Drak let out a gravelly chuckle. Are you frightened of apes with fire sticks? No, Trin said, his voice grim. I'm frightened of what they'll do when they realize they've been pushed too far. Down on Earth, nobody had a clue what was coming. But one man, former Marine Lieutenant Dominic Graves, had been hearing strange things for weeks. Radio static on encrypted channels, blackouts in satellite feeds, reports from deep space listeners going dark one after the other. And now, there were the dreams. They came every night, visions of metal tearing through the sky, of cities crushed under energy blasts, of people screaming, not in fear, but in rage, in vengeance. Something inside Dom had always been off since the war. His squad used to joke he had a sixth sense for violence, but lately, that gut feeling was screaming like a siren. He sat on the porch of his rundown cabin in Montana, watching the stars. He hadn't spoken to his brother in months. His mother was in a hospice. His government? They'd retired him and pretended people like him didn't exist anymore. But when the sky flickered that night, like God blinking, Dom stood up and said 2 words out loud. It's time. The first wave wasn't what people expected. No flashy ships, no glowing energy fields. It started subtle. EMPs knocked out power grids across Asia and Eastern Europe. Air traffic went silent over the Atlantic. Nuclear subs were pulled like toys into the depths by unknown forces. By the time people realized it was an invasion, it was already too late. Or so the Council thought. In orbit, the Council's generals received the first update, not losses, but casualties, on their side. One scout ship over Chicago was ripped apart mid-air by some kind of hijacked satellite weapon. In South Africa, human resistance fighters laid traps. Old-fashioned mines combined with stolen alien tech from the Roswell program. In rural China, a single hacked drone carrier crashed into a fleet and took out 12 light cruisers. They're improvising, a tech officer whispered. No, another corrected, pale and shaking. They're learning. Dom didn't wait for orders. He didn't trust the suits in Washington, or the NATO generals still babbling on emergency frequencies. He knew this kind of war. Dirty, desperate, one where instinct mattered more than command. He was already headed for the old site, the Black Ops base that was decommissioned after the Mars incident. He knew how to get in, knew what they kept buried under all the red tape and classified labels. It wasn't just alien tech the government had. It was weapons they shouldn't have. Weapons designed for the day Earth got challenged. And that day had come. Dom looked at the dusty case he pulled from the wall of the bunker. His name was etched on it. Project Hades, do not unseal. He cracked it open anyway. The case creaked open like a coffin lid. Dust coughed into the air, dancing in the low red emergency lights. Inside was a sleek, matte black rifle, far too long and clean for anything commercially made. Next to it, a sealed injection glowing faintly, labeled Hades Serum Untested. Dom didn't hesitate. His fingers gripped the injector, felt the cool steel against his neck, and plunged it in. The burn was instant, like liquid fire flooding his veins. He gritted his teeth, clenching hard enough to crack a molar. His knees buckled, muscles spasmed. He collapsed beside the case, eyes wide, body screaming. The serum wasn't just a drug, it was a weapon. Genetic rewriting. An illegal bioenhancer reverse-engineered from alien physiology. It had been banned globally the moment the first test subject melted into bone sludge. But this wasn't about survival anymore. This was about vengeance. 6 hours later, the first transport ship touched down outside what used to be Kiev. No warning, no surrender. It opened fire before its landing gear even settled. Entire buildings turned to ash. Streets melted. And then came the resistance. It started with a child, maybe 11 years old. He picked up a fallen soldier's weapon and fired blindly at the alien war machine. 1 in a billion chance. It hit. Panic spread through the alien ranks. They'd been told Earth was passive, weak, technologically inferior. But they didn't understand humans, not truly. They didn't understand what happens when you burn someone's home, kill their people, and assume they'll kneel. Humans don't kneel. They fight, even when they've already lost. Dom stepped out of the bunker looking like he'd been carved from steel. His skin gleamed faintly in the moonlight, a side effect of the serum bonding with his cells. His eyesight had sharpened. He could hear the bugs crawling through the grass. The gun in his hand felt like a feather. But most importantly, he could feel them. Alien signatures, heat trails, movements in the upper atmosphere. The serum had jacked his neural mapping into overdrive. He was tracking ships without looking up. A voice came through on his salvaged comm unit. Broken, weak, FEMA maybe, civil defense. A woman's voice, strained and half-sobbing. "They're everywhere. We've lost Philly, trying to hold the line in Denver, but we need a miracle." Dom didn't reply. He just started walking. On the orbital citadel, the counselors were no longer smug. Not entirely. The reports didn't make sense. Earth's cities should have collapsed within hours. Instead, they were holding. In some places, pushing back. There were no coordinated armies, just cells of resistance popping up, almost like Earth itself had antibodies, improvised weapons, traps, drones hacked from alien tech. They even downed a dreadnought using balloons laced with EMP charges. One junior tactician whispered what everyone feared. "They're not organized, but they're dangerous." Drak slammed a clawed hand on the holotable. "We outnumber them 1,000 to 1. Trin, standing silently in the corner, watched as panic slowly set in. "They're used to fighting fair," he murmured. "Humans never learned that rule." Dom made it to the outskirts of Salt Lake by nightfall. A drone spotted him. It opened fire. He didn't duck, didn't blink. He aimed the Hades rifle and with one clean burst dropped it out of the sky. Plasma round, a straight shot through the AI's logic core. He didn't stop moving. He didn't breathe heavy. The serum had numbed pain, suppressed fear, sharpened everything else. By the time he reached the refugee camp in the canyon ridge, they already knew his name. They called him Ghostfire. A legend was born before he even said a word. In the canyon bunker, a man approached him, greasy beard, limping from a shrapnel wound. Ex-Marine, probably, looked like hell. But his eyes had that look Dom knew too well. A man who'd lost everything and still woke up to fight. "You Dom Graves?" the man asked. Dom nodded once. The man chuckled bitterly. "Thought you were dead." "Not yet." "Good. 'Cause we're building a kill squad. Got intel on a command vessel parked near Phoenix. High-ranking counselors. We hit that? We send a message. Dom didn't hesitate. When do we leave? They moved at night. Dom, the limping Marine, name was Brooks, and a crew of 7 more. 1 former CIA spook, a Ukrainian explosives expert, 2 National Guard deserters, a quiet old man who never said a word but carried a flamethrower like it was his baby, and 3 civilians who just wanted to kill something that didn't bleed red. The plan was suicide. But that didn't matter. Humans specialize in suicide missions. History's full of them. They were betting on one truth. The Council thought humans were predictable, that we'd break under pressure. They were wrong. Humans get smarter when they bleed. The convoy reached Phoenix outskirts by dawn. The alien ship hovered like a goddamn mountain, bigger than anything Dom had ever seen. It blotted the sun. Counselor Venlo was inside, transmitting messages of cleansing to his homeworld, talking about progress, peace through destruction. That was his last transmission. Dom and the crew slipped through the perimeter using stolen ID tags. Brooks blew the first hole in the wall with a homemade rail spike laced with uranium scrap. The rest was just carnage. They moved like fire. Dom took out guards with surgical shots, 1 shot per alien. Never missed. The serum burned in his blood like lightning. Every move calculated, every decision efficient. No fear, no mercy. They reached the command deck in 11 minutes. Dom kicked the door in. Venlo turned, shocked, so arrogant he didn't even raise a weapon. Dom didn't speak. He raised the Hades rifle and put a round through Venlo's chest. Plasma ripped through bone and sinew like tissue paper. The body dropped. Dom turned to the others. Message sent. They rigged the ship to explode. Nuclear feedback using the ship's own drive. The fireball lit up the desert sky. The Council felt it from orbit. Panic erupted. Counselor Drak ordered an orbital bombardment. But before the order could be executed, something strange happened. The humans hijacked the signal. A global transmission hit every alien vessel. Dom's face filled the screens. His eyes glowed faintly. His voice was calm, cold. We didn't ask for this war. You brought it here. You thought we'd fold. Break. Run. A pause. Then he leaned forward. You underestimated the wrong species. The message ended. And then? Earth responded in force. Not with armies, not with fleets, with fury. Every man, woman, and child who had nothing left picked up a weapon. And the slaughter began. In the citadel, Trin turned to Drak, who was pale now, sweat dripping from his leathery brow. You started this, Trin said quietly. Now finish it. But Drak didn't answer. Because for the first time in 1,000 cycles of conquest, they weren't the hunters. They were the prey. The explosion over Phoenix painted the morning sky blood red. Ash fell like snow for miles. Every survivor in the region looked up and felt something that had been beaten out of them since the invasion began. Hope. But Dom wasn't done, not even close. As he stepped away from the burning wreckage of the Council's command ship, his earpiece buzzed. A new frequency, buried deep in military encryption that shouldn't have been active. Lieutenant Graves, a gravelly voice crackled. This is Echo Base. We've been monitoring. You lit a fire. Time to fan it. He didn't ask who they were. He just said, send coordinates. Echo Base wasn't on any map. It wasn't on any satellite either, because it sat inside the hollowed remains of NORAD's second vault, buried in the Rockies and powered by stolen alien tech. They'd been watching the Council's movements for weeks, tracking energy surges, mapping their weaknesses, waiting for someone crazy enough to lead a counteroffensive. And now they had one. Dom arrived coated in blood and ash. his eyes still glowing from the serum's grip. But he looked calm, colder than steel. The room went silent when he walked in. A woman approached him, mid-50s, military haircut, the kind of stare that could stop a heartbeat. General Harper, the last U.S. military commander not under alien control. She didn't salute. She didn't smile. "You made a hell of a mess, Graves." "You want me to make a bigger one?" She smiled now. Barely. "Hell yes." They gathered around the hollow table, flickering with static. Earth's defense was scattered, but Echo Base had a plan. One that hinged on desperation, madness, and a little miracle Dom carried in his bloodstream. "We've confirmed the Council's central fleet is anchored in low orbit, directly above the old equator line," Harper said. "They're tethered to a gravity anchor stationed in the Atlantic, somewhere around the mid-Atlantic ridge." "What's the anchor do?" Dom asked. "Regulates orbital stability for their city ships, keeps them from tearing the atmosphere apart. Disabling it doesn't just make them vulnerable." "It drops them," Dom finished. She nodded. "We're planning to kill gods," she said. Dom nodded once. "Then we'd better hit hard." Dom was given command of Team Phantom, a rogue strike unit made up of the most dangerous people left alive. There was Santos, an ex-cartel enforcer who once melted a tank using a fusion torch. Miller, a disavowed NASA engineer who turned drones into kamikaze swarms. Kwan, a South Korean sniper who hadn't spoken since the Seoul massacre. And Reed, a former priest who carried a shotgun instead of a Bible and said God had officially checked out of Earth. They were monsters, ghosts, survivors. Dom looked at them and said, "We're going to hell. Anyone not ready? Speak now." No one spoke. They launched at dawn. Covert submersible drop via deep-sea capsule into the mid-Atlantic. The ocean swallowed them in silence. No lights, no contact. The Council's gravity anchor wasn't just a device. It was a fortress, built into the sea floor, surrounded by Kraken-like drones and neural minefields. No one had ever touched it. But no one had ever tried this crazy before either. Inside the capsule, Miller piped up. "We're trusting alien tech to get us down there. Anyone else feeling suicidal, or is that just me?" Reed chambered around. "Only way to heaven's through hell, brother." Dom didn't flinch. He was reading the schematics burned into his retina, uploaded straight into his enhanced cortex. The anchor's heart was a fusion core. One hit, and it would cascade through the orbitals above. Simple. In theory, they breached the underwater perimeter using a combination of stealth gel and old-school diving suits modified with alien dampening fields. One wrong step, and their bones would have liquefied from the pressure. They didn't make a wrong step. Inside, the anchor pulsed like a heartbeat. Bright blue light filled the corridors. Aliens moved like clockwork, precise, clean, unprepared for what came next. Because Dom's team didn't sneak, they stormed. Santos tore through the first patrol using a railgun mounted on his shoulder. The rounds tore limbs off. Blood sprayed the walls. Miller hacked the internal defense grid and turned it on the engineers. Electricity flooded the halls, lighting up council officers like overcharged cattle. Kwan climbed the ventilation shaft and dropped behind a security drone, jamming a blade into its eye and riding it down like a mechanical bull. Reed said a prayer, then blew a counselor's head off with a slug round. Dom led the charge into the reactor chamber. He didn't blink. He didn't pause. He just fired, reloaded, and moved. Each step was vengeance. Each bullet, a middle finger to every alien who'd called humanity weak. They reached the fusion core, and Miller planted the device. "We've got 15 minutes. "Plenty," Dom said. Then the emergency sirens wailed. Of course they had backup. Of course. From the depths of the ocean came something not even Echo Base knew about. A sentinel, 50 feet tall, biomechanical, armed with gravity claws and a face like hell. Dom looked at it and didn't flinch. He just said, "Miller, get clear. I'll hold it." "You're insane." "Yeah." And then he charged. The battle was chaos. Dom moved faster than the machine could process. The serum turned him into a blur, each punch a shockwave, each dodge a calculation. He scaled its body, jammed explosives into its joints, ripped wires from its chest. The thing grabbed him once, crushed 3 of his ribs. But he didn't stop. He jammed his rifle into the sentinel's eye and unloaded the clip. It screamed, an unholy sound, then collapsed. Dom fell with it, coughing blood, vision blurry. Miller's voice crackled in. "We're clear. Detonator set." Dom smiled, broken teeth and all. "Light it up." The Atlantic lit up like Judgment Day. The gravity anchor collapsed in on itself. And above, the sky shattered. Hundreds of council ships lost orbital balance. Systems failed. Engines sputtered. One by one, they began to fall. From space, it looked like rain. But on Earth, it looked like a reckoning. In cities across the globe, people watched as the impossible happened. Alien dreadnoughts, those massive, invincible symbols of control, fell. Some crashed into oceans, vanishing beneath the waves. Others smashed into mountains, deserts, wastelands. One slammed into the remains of Paris, turning the sky orange. And with every fall, humanity rose. They weren't just resisting now. They were winning. In the Citadel, chaos reigned. Councillor Drac screamed into comms, demanding reinforcements, but none came. Half the fleet was gone, their anchor destroyed. Their plan, burn Earth and enslave the rest, was dead. Trin stood by the viewport, watching a ship crash through the clouds. "We never understood them," he whispered. "We studied their tech, their wars, but not their soul." "They're savages!" Drac roared. "No," Trin said quietly. "They're human." And that's when Dom's transmission cut in again. Bloodied, barely standing, but still fighting. He stared straight into the camera, eyes wild. "You thought you could own us. You thought we'd die quietly. But we're not built like that." He lifted his rifle. One last message. "You landed on the wrong damn planet." The sky was a graveyard. Burning ships trailed smoke across the heavens, like the fingers of dead gods scraping Earth's surface. The air reeked of scorched metal and charred alien tissue. Dom stood on the ridge of a crater that used to be part of the Atlantic Ocean, blood dripping from his jaw, knuckles swollen and cracked. His ribs were broken, arm dislocated, serum nearly burned out of his system. Didn't matter. He looked up at the smoking wreckage of a council dreadnought plunging toward the sea and smiled. "You sons of bitches picked the wrong planet." Echo Base roared to life. Every scrambled signal, every underground frequency was lighting up like wildfire. Resistance cells that had gone dark for weeks suddenly came back online. Berlin's last holdouts captured a scout cruiser using nothing but jury-rigged harpoons and C4. In Nigeria, a rogue militia hacked into a fallen alien troop carrier and turned it into a rolling fortress, painting "Earth's not yours" across the hull in blood-red spray. But nothing compared to the broadcast. Dom's face, beaten and worn but unbroken, had gone viral across every human screen and every alien transmission. No polish, no PR, just raw rage and grit. He became a symbol. To Earth, the ghost fire the man who burned the sky. To the Council, public enemy number 1. And so they sent him a message back. They didn't target Echo Base. That would have made him a martyr. Number, they went after his brother. Jared Graves lived off-grid in the Colorado wilderness. Quiet. Never wanted the soldier's life like Dom. Never signed up for wars or blood. Didn't matter. The aliens sent a cleanup unit. 4 drop pods, cloaked, fast. The kind of strike that never failed. They underestimated the wrong family. By the time Dom got the warning, one of Echo's scouts had intercepted encrypted chatter. Jared's cabin was already smoking. Dom didn't wait for approval. He didn't wait for backup. He stole a prototype hoverbike, still in testing, and burned across half the damn continent in under 5 hours. By the time he arrived, the woods were filled with smoke and alien plasma residue. The cabin was half destroyed. And Jared, still alive. Bleeding from a deep gash in his side, sitting against a tree, a shotgun across his lap, 3 alien corpses at his feet. "About time, little brother," Jared muttered, blood running down his arm. Dom dropped to a knee, pressed gauze against the wound. "Why didn't you call?" Jared coughed. "Thought you were busy saving the world." "Don't die." "Not planning to." They didn't say it, but Dom knew. They were going to come again. This wasn't a war anymore. This was personal. Back on the Citadel, the mood had shifted from arrogant to terrified. Counselor Drak was foaming at the mouth, pacing, screaming at the remaining generals. "We are the apex species of the known galaxy. We do not lose to feral humans with sharpened rocks." No one replied, because losing was exactly what was happening. Trin stood off to the side, silent, unreadable. "You all watched as this Graves creature destroyed our fleets. You've seen what they're doing now. They're rising, adapting, faster than any projection we ever ran," Drak growled. Trin spoke finally. "They're doing more than adapting. They're becoming something else." "What does that mean?" another counselor hissed. "They're evolving. The ones we enhanced, like Graves. The serum didn't kill him. It unlocked something. He's not just human anymore. And you're afraid of him?" Trin turned to him. "You should be." Echo Base couldn't hold much longer. Word was spreading. The Council was deploying a new weapon. Not another fleet. Not a dreadnought. A Hunter-class Apex unit. Codenamed the Hollow. Grown in vats. Engineered from the DNA of every species the Council ever conquered. Wrapped in living armor, armed with a consciousness designed purely to kill. No diplomacy, no hesitation. It had one directive. Bring me Graves. It landed in Nevada, near the ruins of what used to be Las Vegas. Flattened 5 resistance bases in 3 hours, left no survivors. Its mind was directly connected to the Citadel. It learned as it killed. And now, it was hunting. Dom knew it was coming. He could feel it in his bones. Something about the serum, maybe the way it rewrote his nerves, let him sense the Hollow from hundreds of miles away, like gravity pulling him toward death. He didn't run. He set the trap. He chose the Dust Bowl, an abandoned wasteland scattered with wrecked war machines and ash storms. No cover, no witnesses, just him and the Hollow. He took his old gear, didn't bother with the high-tech weapons this time. This fight wasn't about science, it was about will. Jared patched him up best he could, taped the broken ribs, injected another round of serum. This one, unstable, could kill him in 10 minutes or turn him into a god. "Still crazy," Jared muttered, handing him the last of their ammo. Dom loaded his rifle, slung it over his shoulder, and grinned. "Wouldn't be me if I wasn't." Then he walked into the storm. The Hollow dropped from the sky like a meteor. It didn't land. It pounded the earth. 30 feet tall, shaped like a man but twice as fast, twice as strong. Armor fused to its skin, no eyes, just sensors and rage. Dom didn't flinch. He raised his weapon, fired once, plasma round ricocheting off the hollow's shoulder with a shower of sparks. It turned, looked at him, let out a sound that wasn't a roar. It was laughter. Then it charged. Dom ran, not in fear, in strategy. The first wave was distance. Let it think he was afraid. Make it overcommit. The hollow's claws tore through steel wreckage like paper, chasing him through twisted tanks and shattered drones. Then Dom spun, fired a shot straight into a weak joint behind its knee. It stumbled. Dom leapt up onto a ruined tower, launched a grenade straight at its back. Direct hit. Flames licked across the armor, but it didn't slow down. The hollow was laughing again. "You are not the first," it said in a voice like static and screams. "You will not be the last." Dom's eyes narrowed. "Yeah, but I'll be the one who kills you." The battle raged for hours. They tore the earth apart. Dom's suit was shredded. Blood poured from half a dozen wounds. His vision blurred, but he kept moving, kept striking. He jammed a blade under the hollow's ribcage and twisted. It stabbed him through the shoulder. He bit down on the pain, ripped its arm off. They fought like animals. No tactics, no rules, just rage. And then Dom saw it, the power core, pulsing beneath its chest plate, vulnerable, flickering. Final shot. One chance. Dom leapt forward as the hollow roared, raised his rifle. For Earth, he pulled the trigger. The core exploded. A blinding light swallowed them both. Then, silence. Hours later, Jared and the Resistance crew dug Dom out of the crater. His body was broken, barely breathing, but alive. Somehow, alive. The hollow's remains were scattered across the battlefield. Dom had done the impossible, again. And the Council? They watched the footage in horror, watched as their ultimate weapon fell. There was only one message left, one truth echoing across space. You don't conquer Earth. You survive it, if you're lucky. Dom lay in the crater for hours before they pulled him out, his pulse barely registered, bones shattered, nerves fried, half his face swollen. The serum was overclocking his heart, pushing his body into critical zones. A normal man would have died 5 times over. But Dom Graves wasn't normal anymore. He was the last edge of a species that refused to go extinct. Jared rode with him in the evac skimmer, gripping his hand the whole way like it could keep his brother tethered to this world. "You hear me, Dom? You're not dying. Not now." Dom didn't respond, not with words, but his fingers twitched once. Still fighting. Echo Base went into full lockdown. Medics worked in silence while Command scrambled. The death of the Hollow had shifted the balance of power, and Earth smelled blood. General Harper paced in front of the strategy table. The last transmission from the Citadel had leaked across their network. Counselor Drak screaming, calling Graves a freak, swearing revenge, demanding his head be displayed across every system as a warning to the rest of the subspecies. It backfired. That broadcast didn't frighten Earth. It lit a fuse. Cities across the globe began building strike squads. Civilians armed themselves in droves. Captured Council tech was being converted into anti-air batteries and stealth drones. Humanity was becoming a machine of war. But Harper knew it wasn't enough. They had to end this before the Council regrouped. They had to go up, straight into the belly of the beast, the Citadel. But there was only one man who could lead that mission, and he was dying. Dom woke up in a haze, tubes in his arms, bandages wrapped around most of his body. The lights were dim, the room silent. Jared was asleep in a chair next to him, head resting on his chest. Dom whispered, voice dry as dust. "You always snore like that?" Jared jerked awake, almost falling over. Jesus, Dom, you're alive? Barely. You damn lunatic. You fought that thing for 3 hours straight. You punched it in the throat. Dom smiled weakly. It laughed at me. Yeah, and now it's ash. A medic entered, relief on her face. You shouldn't be conscious. That last dose nearly liquefied your heart. You need to rest. No time, Dom croaked. What's the status? She hesitated. Echo's prepping something, big, but General Harper said nothing moves until you sign off. Dom nodded once, teeth gritted against the pain. Then get her in here. Harper entered the room like the storm she always carried. Sharp, focused, no bullshit. You look like hell. Feel worse, Dom muttered. Tell me what you've got. She dropped a datapad onto the tray. The Citadel's orbit is decaying. The gravity anchor's destruction threw their equilibrium off. They've got a week before they're forced to relocate or stabilize. That's our window. To do what? To invade. Dom raised an eyebrow. You're serious? I'm done playing defense, Harper said. We hit them now, while they're off balance, while they're bleeding. We send in a small team, phantom level. You, me, and whoever you trust. We disable their central AI, sabotage their power core, and turn that floating coffin into a tomb. You want to breach a galactic fortress with a fire team? I want to end this war. Dom stared at her, his body screaming in agony. Every part of him said no, rest, heal, survive, but Earth didn't need survival. It needed vengeance. He nodded. I'll lead. The team assembled within hours. Small, lean, lethal. Jared, of course. He wouldn't let Dom out of his sight. Santos, fresh from detonating a black site in Spain. Quan, still silent, still deadly. Harper, who refused to let any soldier do what she wouldn't. And Reed, the former priest, who simply said, "Every heaven needs a devil." They boarded a repurposed alien interceptor, stripped, modified, and barely held together with welded steel and prayer. Miller, the engineer, patched it as best he could. You got 2 hours of stealth. After that, every sensor from Jupiter to Hell's Gate will ping you. 2 hours is all I need, Dom said. He turned to the team. This isn't about winning. This is about making damn sure they never try this again. That every counselor sees Earth and remembers the price of underestimating us. He locked eyes with each of them. We go in hard. We come out legends. Or we don't come out at all. No one flinched. The doors sealed shut. The ship launched. They reached orbit faster than expected. Council forces were in disarray. Ships were scattered. The Citadel, once a symbol of power, now looked like a rusted god bleeding from every seam. Still massive, still armed, but not unbreakable anymore. Miller's stealth systems held until they were within boarding range, a small docking port, unguarded. The Council didn't expect an attack. Not here, not in their home. Dom smiled. Always the same mistake. They breached, and hell followed. Inside the Citadel, alarms blared. Counselor Drac was raving again, clawing at screens, demanding explanations. How did they breach us? Trin didn't answer. He simply watched the feed. Dom Graves, leading the charge, covered in scars, one arm in a cast, fire in his eyes, the last ghost of Earth. Trin leaned forward and whispered, "Because you made him necessary." The assault was surgical. Quan cleared the first hall with precision shots. No wasted movement, just bodies dropping. Santos rigged explosives along structural seams, cutting off Council reinforcements. Harper guided the path to the AI chamber, reading alien schematics like scripture. Jared stayed by Dom's side, covering his blind spots, catching him when the serum made his knees buckle. And Dom? Dom was a storm. He fought like a man with nothing left. Bullets, fists, blades, anything he could get his hands on. The Citadel's elite guards fell before him like grass before a fire. But the AI core wasn't unguarded. The Sentinel protocol had activated. And that's when they met it, the last failsafe, a council clone, designed in Dom's image, built using stolen DNA, serum-enhanced, raised in a simulation to believe it was the real Dominic Graves. The Council's twisted trump card. It stepped into the chamber, wearing Dom's face. A perfect mirror, stronger, faster, colder. "You're obsolete," it said. Dom stepped forward, bleeding, limping, smiling. "Maybe, but I'm still human." And then they fought. The duel was savage. No words, no taunts. Just two titans locked in a death dance. The clone had perfect form. Calculated strikes, no hesitation. But Dom had rage, memory, purpose. He took hits that should have killed him, broke bones and kept moving. Jared tried to interfere once. Dom shoved him back. "This one's mine." Finally, Dom grabbed the clone by the throat, slammed it into the AI core, and shouted, "This is what makes us different." He head-butted the clone, breaking his own nose. "We don't quit." He stabbed it through the heart with a fractured beam of Citadel steel. "We endure." The clone shuddered, eyes wide, then died. Reed planted the final charge on the AI's matrix. Harper activated the countdown. They had 5 minutes. The team sprinted through crumbling corridors, the Citadel groaning under its own weight. Explosions lit the walls. Alien blood stained the floors. Drak died screaming when Santos collapsed a beam onto the command deck. Trin, they left behind. He didn't run. He just sat at his terminal, watching the Earthborn virus tear down centuries of arrogance. Dom paused as they reached the launch bay. "Why aren't you fighting?" Trin looked up. "Because you were right. We lost the moment we saw you as prey." Dom nodded once. "Remember that." And then they left him behind. The Citadel fell, not in fire, but in gravity. Earth watched as the once mighty fortress shuddered, tilted, and plunged towards the atmosphere. Burning, breaking, dying. By the time it struck the ocean, it was nothing but wreckage. The war was over. Earth had won, not with fleets, but with fury. Back on the surface, Dom stood on a rooftop in D.C., looking up at the clear sky. He still felt the pain, the weight, the loss. But there was peace now. Harper approached, hands behind her back. "You did it." "No," Dom said quietly. "We did." Jared joined them, lighting a cigarette with a shaky hand. "So what now?" Dom looked at the stars. "They'll come again someday, maybe not in our lifetime, maybe not even in the next." "Then?" Dom smiled. "Then we'll remind them again. Because that's what humans do. We survive. We adapt. And when the universe forgets who we are, we make them remember." 2 weeks after the Citadel fell, Earth was still on fire, but now it burned with rebirth. The ash had barely settled. Corpses, both human and alien, still littered the streets in cities like Mumbai, Cairo, Dallas, and Buenos Aires. Power grids were only partially restored. Communications were fragmented. Governments were gone, or ghosts of what they'd once been. But flags flew again. Not the old ones, new ones. Flags made in dirt and sweat and blood. Unity forged in fire. Borders didn't matter anymore. Everyone bled red. That was enough. And at the center of it all, the man who should have been dead 10 times over was walking again. Dominic Graves. He refused to take a bed. Even after what his body had gone through, ripped muscles, fused bones, unstable serum still pulsing through his veins. He wouldn't rest. Harper ordered him to stay grounded. Jared begged him to take a few weeks. The medics warned that another battle could stop his heart. Dom just said, "There's still work to do." And there was. The Council's fall hadn't erased their influence. It had exposed it. Entire cities discovered alien tech buried in basements. Rogue AI systems waiting to be reactivated. Mercenaries from the Rim systems, still loyal to their former masters, now running raids on supply lines. And worse, there were humans who'd collaborated. That truth hit harder than any alien weapon. They were called Whiteskins, a slur born in blood. Not because of race, but because of cowardice. They'd painted their homes white to signal peace to the Council, handed over neighbors to avoid slaughter, traded information for comfort. Now they were being hunted. Some vigilante groups didn't wait for trials. They dragged Whiteskins out into the streets, shot them, burned their houses. Others tried to defend them, arguing survival wasn't betrayal. Dom hated all of it, because he understood something no one else did yet. The war was over, but the trauma was just beginning. He walked through the ruins of Chicago. Not to fight, just to look, observe. A city once vibrant, now choked in smoke and rubble. Children played with burnt-out alien rifles like toys. Mothers scavenged for food while their husbands guarded the perimeter with homemade weapons. A man approached Dom, dirt-smeared and wide-eyed. "You him?" Dom didn't answer. The man stepped closer. "You're the one who killed the Hollow? Brought the Citadel down?" Still Dom said nothing. The man's expression shifted. "My wife. She was taken by them. We still don't know what they did to her in that ship. She hasn't spoken in 3 days. Just screams at night." Dom finally looked at him. "I'm sorry." "Sorry?" The man spat. "You killed their leaders. You think that fixes this?" Dom didn't flinch. "Number. But it's a start." Back at Echo Base, the War Council had shifted from military objectives to stabilization, rebuilding, reintegration, managing alliances across regions that had never worked together before. Russia and Ukraine now shared airspace. China opened its ports to former U.S. fleets. The old world order was dust. Harper sat at the head of the table. Older now, worn. Her once hard stare now dulled with exhaustion. Dom stood beside her, arms folded. "We need to talk about the serum," she said quietly. "No." "Dom, it's not optional anymore. You're proof it works. But you're not the only one who took it. We have a list of others. Some are mutating. One man in Brazil melted his own squad when his body temperature spiked past 400 degrees. Dom looked away. "We need to contain it," Harper continued. "Quarantine the users, or kill them if we have to." Dom's jaw clenched. "You made us. Now you want to bury us?" "We made weapons," she said, voice shaking. "You survived. But you're not human anymore, Dom. Not fully." He leaned in close. "Maybe humanity needs a little monster left to keep the rest in line." Jared tried to reach him later that night. They sat on a rooftop, watching drones sweep through broken neighborhoods, dropping off medical packs and ration crates. Kids ran after them like dogs chasing trucks. "You're scaring people, Dom." Dom didn't respond. "I get it," Jared continued. "You fought. You bled. You became something else, but you're still my brother." Dom finally spoke. "You know what I think about when I close my eyes?" "What?" "That first drop over Arizona. I was in a foxhole. Our comms were down. The alien walkers were tearing through our front line. I remember thinking, this is it. This is how we go. Screaming in the dirt, forgotten." Jared didn't interrupt. "And now, I look around, and they call me a hero. A legend. But all I can feel is the dirt. It never left me." "You're not in the hole anymore." Dom looked at him. "Aren't I?" The following week, a council distress beacon activated off the coast of Greenland. A damaged life pod. Unknown contents. High radiation signature. Dom insisted on leading the recon. Harper refused. "You're not ready." "I'm never going to be ready. That thing might have answers." Or another hollow. Dom stared at her. Then let's see which of us breaks first. She didn't stop him, because deep down, she knew this wasn't about answers. It was about control. About who had the right to dictate Earth's future now. And that meant confronting whatever was left of the enemy. The recon team found the pod half buried in ice, half melted from re-entry, sparking with alien glyphs. Santos cracked it open. Inside? Not a weapon, not a leader, a child, alien, young, small, its skin pale blue, eyes wide and frightened. It spoke one word in perfect English. Please. Santos raised his weapon. Dom stopped him. Don't, he said. It's Council, Santos growled. It's a kid. What do you think it's going to grow up to be? Dom knelt. The creature flinched. It had no claws, no teeth, just a look of something that had watched its world collapse. He held out his hand, and the child took it. The debate lasted for days. Keep it? Kill it? Study it? Harper's team wanted it gone. Dom refused. He stood in front of the War Council and said, We swore we were better than them. That's why we fought. If we kill this kid, we prove we were lying the whole time. Some argued, some yelled. But in the end, they left the child under Dom's care. It followed him everywhere now. Didn't speak much, just watched, studied. It never smiled, but it never cried either. Dom called it Ash, after what the Council turned Earth into, and maybe, just maybe, what could grow from it. But there were still shadows. A new faction had emerged. Former soldiers, ex-intelligence, and serum-enhanced mutants. They called themselves the Ironborn. Their mission, wipe out every alien trace on Earth. Ash included. They didn't trust Dom. Thought he was compromised, corrupted. They called him the Hollow King, a nickname that stuck, and they were growing. Fast, Harper warned him. This doesn't end with peace, Dom. It ends with fire again. Dom looked at Ash. No, he said. Not if we build something better first. And so began the next war. Not one fought with weapons, but with ideology. Dom on one side, trying to build a world where the war's pain meant something. The Ironborn on the other, eager to finish what they thought Dom started. And in the middle, Ash, the last survivor of a fallen empire, and Earth, still healing, still haunted, but standing. Always standing. Dom stood at the edge of what used to be Washington, D.C., now a half-reconstructed husk of its former self. Buildings stood upright again, but their glass was shattered. Streets were paved, but stained with old blood. Flags waved, but none of them meant the same thing anymore. Ash walked beside him, quiet as ever. The alien child had aged, visibly smarter, quicker, its once empty eyes now watching everything with the cautious wisdom of someone who knew what it meant to survive extermination. Dom didn't treat Ash like a prisoner. He didn't treat him like a pet. He treated him like what he was. The last living piece of the enemy. And maybe, just maybe, the last shot at something different. But not everyone agreed. The Ironborn were no longer a whisper. They were a damn movement. Ex-military, rogue scientists, militiamen, even civilians, united by one belief. No more aliens. No more diplomacy. Burn it all. They saw Dom not as a hero, but as a traitor. A man who let the last serpent crawl into the garden. They didn't forget what he did during the war, but they didn't forgive what he did after it either. Especially not when he started building the Bastion. It wasn't a base, it was a vision. A multi-species settlement built on the remains of an old research facility in the Colorado Rockies. Humans, survivors, even the occasional surrendered alien refugee from the Council's fallout. Engineers, farmers, children, all trying to make peace out of the ashes. It was supposed to be a promise. Instead, it became a target. The first attack was small. A scout drone hacked mid-flight. It crashed into Bastion's outer perimeter and exploded. No one died, but the message was clear. The second was more direct. A convoy delivering supplies to the Bastion's water treatment station was ambushed. 3 dead. 1 burned alive in his own transport. The third. That was personal. They tried to kill Ash. It happened during a storm. Dom had just returned from the Southern Valley, where he'd helped reroute solar nodes. He came back to alarms, screaming, and blood. Ash had been cornered near the mess hall. His arm was sliced open. He bled purple. Dom found him behind an overturned table, clutching his side, eyes wide with terror. A knife stuck in the wall just inches above where his head had been. He wasn't crying. He was just waiting to die. Dom saw red. Jared held Dom back from strangling the last attacker to death. They'd caught one, Ironborn mark tattooed under his eye, reeking of backwater ideology and fanatical hatred. "He's not worth it," Jared shouted. Dom didn't care. His knuckles were split open from pounding the man's jaw. "Say it," Dom growled, breathing hard. "Say what you called him." The man spat a tooth onto the ground. "Monster!" Dom's eyes glowed faintly. The serum still had its claws in him, always humming under the surface like a volcano waiting to wake. He leaned close. "The only monster here is the one who stabs children." Jared pulled him away. Dom didn't resist, but the damage was done. The word was out. Dom Graves, the Ghostfire, the savior of Earth, was defending an alien child while humans were dying. The Ironborn didn't need to spread propaganda. They let reality do the work. General Harper called him back to Echo Base, not to scold him, not to warn him, to distance herself. "You're becoming a problem, Dom," she said, seated behind a cracked war table. "Number, I'm becoming a reminder," he replied coldly, "of what we actually fought for." Harper folded her hands. She looked old now, not in the face, but in the soul. "The people are afraid. Ash is a symbol of the thing they still can't forget. Maybe they're wrong, but fear's not rational. It spreads faster than reason." Dom leaned on the table. "So what? We throw him in a cage? Let them burn the Bastion to the ground? I'm telling you to be careful. I'm telling you the Ironborn aren't fringe anymore. They have weapons, ships. Some of our own troops are slipping to their side." Dom nodded slowly. "Then I'll handle it myself." Harper stared at him. "You think they're the same as the Council, that if you fight hard enough, they'll break?" "No," Dom said quietly. "I think they're worse." A few days later, a message arrived, delivered by hand, scrawled on parchment, burnt around the edges. Dom read it alone on the Bastion's overlook, with Ash sitting silently nearby. "You were a hero once. Now you protect what we swore to destroy. You've lost your way. Come to Black Hollow, come alone, or we burn your city to the ground." It was signed with a blood mark. The Ironborn's leader didn't hide anymore. He called himself the Revenant. No one knew who he really was. Some said he was a former Council experiment, turned against both sides. Others said he was one of Dom's own men, left behind during the fall of Mexico City, betrayed and left for dead. But one thing was clear. He knew how to hurt Dom. Dom folded the letter and slipped it into his vest. Ash looked up at him. "You're going to go." Dom nodded. "I'm coming with you." Dom didn't smile. "Number, you stay. You help them build." Ash hesitated. "They don't trust me." "Then show them why they should." Dom went to Black Hollow alone. No backup, no communications. It was a dead zone in the Rockies, an old mining town converted into a fortress by madmen and ideologues. He walked through their front gates unarmed, wearing the same combat jacket he wore during the war, his badge still etched onto the shoulder. DF-1. human first defender. Ironic now. The Ironborn greeted him like ghosts, men with burnt skin, patchwork armor, makeshift rifles, and cold stares. They led him through narrow corridors until he reached the throne room, if you could call it that. It was a cave, lit by old alien lamps, with the Revenant seated atop a pile of old bones, human and council both. He wore a mask made from hollow plating. His voice was distorted. "I expected you to come." Dom stared at him, unimpressed. "You threatened my people." "You threatened ours," the Revenant said, voice cold. "You let them walk among us. You think peace is possible?" Dom folded his arms. "I think survival is. Survival is control, clean blood, no more infection." Dom shook his head. "You're not fighting for survival. You're fighting because you liked the war, because you didn't know who you were without it." The Revenant stood. "I was made in fire, just like you, but I chose purity. You chose corruption." Dom took a step forward. "You want me dead? Try it, but leave the Bastion alone." "You've already lost," the Revenant said. "We've infiltrated the northern camp. Half your medical supplies are poisoned. One of your guards is ours. That alien you coddle, he'll be ashes by morning." Dom didn't blink. He just pulled the detonator from his pocket and hit it. Outside the cave, 3 hidden charges exploded, destroying the anti-air cannons the Ironborn had hidden on the ridge. And overhead, a dropship descended, Jared, Quan, and Santos inside. Dom smiled grimly. "I didn't come alone. You think I'm that stupid?" The Revenant lunged. Dom met him mid-air. The fight was brutal. Blades, fists, serum-fueled strikes. But the Revenant didn't have Dom's memory. He didn't have the reason. Dom slammed his head into the Revenant's mask, breaking the alloy. He drove a blade under his rib, twisted and growled, "You're not fire. You're smoke." And then he let him fall. They took the Ironborn compound apart, piece by piece. Hundreds surrendered. Some ran. Some blew themselves up rather than face trial. But it didn't matter. The war was back. Not on the surface, not in orbit, in the hearts of men. And Dom knew it wasn't over, not even close. The Ironborn were broken, but not gone. They scattered like rats across the ruined edges of the earth, digging into the bones of what was left. Their weapons were rusted, but their hate was fresh. Their defeat didn't kill their belief. It just sharpened it. Dom knew better than to call it peace. It was a pause, and pauses never lasted long. Ash stood at the edge of the Bastion's outer wall, looking up at the stars. He was growing fast. Not in height, but in depth. More language, more curiosity, more questions about the world and the people who lived in it, and the ones who tried to destroy it. He still had scars on his arm from the knife attack. Still flinched when humans got too close. But he didn't run anymore. He stood. Even when they stared. Even when they whispered. Dom joined him on the wall. "You still looking for your home out there?" he asked. Ash didn't look away from the sky. "There's nothing out there for me. My people are gone." "You sure?" Ash finally turned to him. "The real question is, what's down here for me?" Dom didn't answer. Because he didn't know. In the months that followed, the Bastion became more than an idea. It became a movement. Dom didn't build a nation. He built a standard, a place where species didn't matter as much as purpose, where bloodlines took a backseat to integrity. Soldiers, builders, thinkers, humans and former council species alike, started migrating to the Rockies. Not because it was safe, but because it was his. Because Dominic Graves still breathed, and as long as he did, people believed they had a shot. That terrified the rest of the world. General Harper came to see him one final time. Her eyes were clouded, her frame thinner. The war had aged her more than any calendar could. Dom met her in the ruins of Denver, where she'd helped reconstruct an international summit, one of the first of its kind since the council fell. A council of humans, only humans, trying to decide Earth's next future. Harper walked with a cane now, but she still carried the weight of command like armor. "You should have come," she said. Dom stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Wouldn't have mattered. They listen to you. They fear me." She sighed. "We're fracturing again. Borders, power grabs, resource wars, it's creeping back, the very thing that left us vulnerable in the first place." "I can't stop humans from being what they are," Dom said flatly. "No," she agreed. "But you can show them what they could be." She handed him something. A worn military badge, DF-1, his own, cleaned, polished, newly pinned with a global seal. "They voted. You're to be named the first commander of Earth's unified Peace Corps." Dom stared at it, then set it down on the table. "I'm not a peacekeeper." Harper didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just said, "Then maybe it's time you stopped pretending you are." That night, Ash found him in the old chapel at the edge of Bastion, one of the few places that had never been weaponized. Dom sat in the front pew, staring at the floor like it had answers. "I don't know what I am anymore," he muttered. Ash sat beside him. "You're not human," the boy said gently. "Not fully." Dom looked at him. "Thanks for the pep talk." "But that's not a bad thing," Ash added. "You were never supposed to survive what you did. You were changed to win, and you did." Dom was silent. Ash leaned forward. "So the question is, what does a man like you do in a world that's no longer burning?" Dom closed his eyes. He thought of Jared, building homes now, married to a woman from one of the border towns, smiling again. He thought of Santos, working to dismantle black market weapons and train young defenders. He thought of Reed, gone, found dead weeks ago in a field outside Kansas, kneeling beside a makeshift grave, smiling with a shotgun in his lap like he'd found peace on his own terms. And he thought of Quan, who still never spoke, who vanished into the forests of Asia and never came back. They were all trying to live. Dom, he didn't know how, he didn't know if. Ash stood. "If you leave, they'll turn on each other." Dom shook his head. "They'll do that anyway. That's what humans do." "No," Ash said firmly. "They imitate what they see. And right now they see a ghost in charge. A man who doesn't believe in what he's building." Dom looked up. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, he heard something in Ash's voice he hadn't before. Faith. Not in gods, not in ideals, in him. The next day, Dom walked through Bastion like a new man. Not healed, not forgiven, but decided. He met with the council. He sat down with the delegates from the old world powers. He stood in front of hundreds of cameras, wearing the uniform they'd offered him once, and rejected. He gave a speech that made history, but not because of what he promised, because of what he didn't. He didn't promise peace. He didn't promise hope. He promised accountability. "I won't lead you," he said. "I'll watch you. And if I see this world falling again, if I see the cracks forming from greed and cowardice, then I will become the fire you tried to put out." He looked straight at the lens. "I'm not your hero. I'm your reminder." And then he walked away. Years passed. The Bastion remained. Ash became a diplomat, first of his kind. Not quite human, not quite alien, just himself. And for many that was enough. Earth changed. Some old borders returned, others vanished. Technology boomed. Cities rose from ruin. Scars stayed visible, but they became part of the architecture. The Ironborn remained too, smaller, splintered, still dangerous. They struck sometimes, burned outposts, killed politicians. But they were no longer the future. just the ghosts of a past that couldn't win. And Dominic Graves? He disappeared. Rumors said he'd died. Others swore he was still watching, that his shadow passed over every summit, that his name was whispered before every major vote, that his blade still hung above the neck of every man who thought about bringing tyranny back to Earth. No one saw him. But every now and then, somewhere in the mountains, when a power line sparked wrong or a comm relay pinged without request, they wondered if he was still out there, not as a man, not as a leader, but as a reckoning. Because Earth had learned something. You don't provoke a species by calling it savage. You provoke it by surviving what it thought would kill you. You provoke it by letting it remember, and Earth remembered.